do have a serious concern to bring forward today, and that is around the area of regulatory reform. It's my view, and I know that it's the view of probably everybody at the table here, that we need to create a roadmap to build a stronger Colorado economy where vibrant job growth is the new norm. We talk a lot about job creation and growing the economy here in this building, but we seldom acknowledge that the regulatory environment is often as important to business planning and investment as our tax structure. On January 5th of this year, I convened a roundtable meeting of business groups and asked them to identify specific problems in the state's regulatory system concerning specifically rules that impose cost burdens on businesses, which negatively affect their business plans and investments and expansion. And we had over 30 groups in attendance at this particular roundtable. Excuse me. Some of the biggest regulatory burdens are those associated with simply the uncertainties and seeming arbitrariness of some agency rulemaking. Thus, some of the targets of Senate Bill 167 reflect the complaints heard in that meeting, as well as a number of other roundtable meetings that I had over the course of the last year, as well as some of my colleagues in the Senate. And what this bill does specifically is it designs and implements a process for us to move forward on and develop a list of recommendations for the legislature to consider so that we can reduce the cost of being a regulated business here in the state of Colorado. Some of the important goals of the task force are as follows. You can take a look at them. You get it on page 4, at line 17. We will ask. This is the way the process works. We'll ask whether the current regulatory system creates an advantage to one segment of an industry at the expense of another, whether the existing availability of a cost-benefit analysis is defined in Section 24.4.103 needs strengthening in order to produce meaningful measures of adverse impacts on consumers and private industry, whether the enforcement practices of the current system, if any, create incentives for unreasonably punitive fines and penalties on private parties, whether economic conditions merit a downsizing of the regulatory body with resulting reduction of financial compliance costs, whether a particular regulated industry is regulated in an outmoded form of regulation that is no longer advisable, whether currently regulated industries are regulated by other means, including but not limited to federal regulatory systems, whether continued regulation of the regulated industry is justified, or whether there are adequate marketplace solutions to allow for the removal of current regulations, thereby resulting in cost savings, whether the current system regulates fewer businesses than it did in the 2007-2008 fiscal year. You would want to do this for the purpose of conducting some comparative analysis regarding costs between those 2 years, those 2 spans of time. Whether credible testimony by a regulated industry suggests that compliance costs could be reduced or eliminated at no risk to the public welfare or environment, at no risk of creating or protecting a monopoly. At the end of this process, which is a pretty defined process, as you'll see, the committee then, the task force, will develop a set of recommendations for the legislature to take up. Let me just make a few other observations here, and then I'll be happy to take questions, Madam Chair. The requirement enacted in 2003 that for a cost-benefit analysis of proposed rules is weak and ineffective. Only 4% of new regulations promulgated since 2004 have been subjected to a cost-benefit analysis. The governor and the president both, President of the United States both, have made a lot of statements about the need to drive down the cost of being a regulated business so that those same businesses can then be more productive. We need to evaluate whether the present system in many agencies contains perverse incentives for punitive fines, since the agency benefits financially from the monies collected. And really the question to get at there is, if the fine is bringing in more revenue than is required to ensure compliance, why? We need to ask whether the regulations are outmoded and do not reflect present-day technologies and everyday business practices. Colleagues, we have not ever done this in the state. The way that we sort of non-systematically do this is throughout what is called our sunset review process, which in the experience of everybody I've ever talked to down here is largely a rubber stamp approach to dealing with the regulations that are. We rearrange some deck chairs, but seldom ask more fundamental questions about whether the regulation should exist in its present form at all. Let me speak to you a little bit about the 12-member task force that is created to study these problems. These are people with key skill sets in areas that will provide great assistance. You'll notice that there are no legislators on the task force. We have kind of a cross-section of academics as well as practitioners in businesses of various sizes, people from think tanks, etc. It will have a bipartisan makeup of this task force. There will be 6 members of both major political parties. They will work with the Committee on Legislative Legal Services. So, Committee on Legal Services will appoint the 12 members. If I could just step back here for a moment, Madam Chair. They'll appoint the 12 members, 6 and 6. All right, and then that committee will begin to move through the 19 agencies in state government, key parts of the regulatory structure, using their judgment and using this series of questions to kind of give some context to their hearings. And they will use those factors to determine whether they can drive down the cost of being a regulated business here in the state of Colorado. At the end of the period, which right now is specified as a 12-month period, since this bill has an extra step to go through, has to go through Leg Council, I'm almost certainly going to be offering a couple amendments there, one dealing with cost and the other one dealing with a process item. Upon reflection, I think the way to handle this process is, rather than squeeze it into a 12-month period, I believe we should spread it out to a 24-month period. And I think the better way to do it then is to offer an interim report at the 12-month period, so that some of the learning that is coming out of it can be applied immediately legislatively. In any event, most of us have, that have been down here for a while, have some fatigue with studying things. I've thought an awful lot about that, and it is a reality of some of the things that we do down here, and I would be probably the last to recommend that we do a study for the sake of studying, or do a study for the sake of appearing that we're actually doing something that we're not going to do at all. This is a tight process with an outcome-based objective in mind, and I think that if we attend to this by putting the right people in the mix, ensure that they go through these steps as stipulated in the bill, they will come out with a good product that will save businesses in the state of Colorado money. And if we could do that, we'll be successful in loosening up some of the revenue needed to create new jobs here in the state. I'll make a couple closing comments, and I'll take questions, Madam Chair. There's a new study published from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that looked at only regulations affecting the labor and employment, and it ranks Colorado in the second tier of states with only a fair employment relations index. Texas, North and South Dakota, Oklahoma, and Kansas are among the states ranked as having a good environment for labor relations and employment. The study found that 12,669 additional jobs could have been created in Colorado in 2009 had the state improved its regulatory environment. 2009, according to the study, 13.323 businesses, new businesses, were deterred from entering Colorado because of our regulatory environment. I was visiting with the governor about this the other day. We should do this work, and we need to do substantive work in this area, but I believe that there's a secondary and really significant benefit to engaging ourselves in this kind of work, and that is what signal are we sending to businesses across the state of Colorado with respect to our intention to grow a vibrant workforce here. And I kind of chuckled back and forth about, it seems sort of touchy-feely to talk about the emotion of doing business or the psyche of doing business, but I'll remind you that we have a consumer confidence index for a reason. It is hard to get investment dollars flowing when people are uncertain. Let's cast a vision, a compelling vision for state employers that we know where we're going, and with respect to regulation here in the state, we're going to drive down the cost of being a compliant, productive business in the state of Colorado. I'll close with a quote from President Obama, who opined in the January 18th edition of the Wall Street Journal. When speaking about regulations, he says, "Sometimes those rules have gotten out of balance, placing unreasonable burdens on businesses, burdens that have stifled innovation and have had a chilling effect on growth and jobs." Let's do the hard work that we need to do in a focused, deliberate fashion, drive down the cost of being compliant here in the state, and watch Colorado employers and our constituents begin to reap the rewards through new jobs